Alright, so we're going to review the Razor Shift skate. These are my favorite skates right now, and there already are some good reviews on them, so we're going to focus on two things that I haven't seen in any other reviews. One is the fastest way to change your frames using the instant frame change system, and the other is this skate's compatibility with the Wish frame, which is my favorite frame to ride. So the Razor Shift is an awesome skate. Ever since I got into aggressive skating, really wanted a skate that I could use to skate the mile or two to the skate park and then skate and grind at the skate park. And so when I saw the Razor Shift come out, I was like, that seems awesome. This seems like the way to go. But then I looked at some reviews of it and I was kind of hesitant because it looks from other reviews like this instant frame change or IFC system is not actually as fast as you would think. So you've got your frames that you can attach to the sole. So you get this sole that comes along with the skate, and you can set up your different frames on it, and then you can swap those in and out. Originally there were two screws that kind of held it all together that you could put in two. The newer ones have 4 screws. So I was kind of like, okay, so you have to take your skates off, you have to have a tool along with you, you have to undo 4 screws, you gotta bring along another frame and sole and maybe slider, and then you gotta put those on, put the 4 screws back on. How is that really saving me any time? I could have just brought another frame, taken the wheel, it's 4 screws to take the wheels out and take the UFC bolts out. If you have an anti-rocker frame, it's really only 2 bolts. It seems like you're not saving a lot of time with the Razor Shift mechanism. Then I saw some reviews of people who just skate them without using the bolts. So you basically just take your skates off, press those 2 buttons, and swap out your frames, and you're good to go. And I've got it down to where I also don't use the extra screws, and I can actually switch the frames without taking my skates off. So I can just sit down, press these buttons on the bottom of my boot without even taking my skates off, pop them off, put the other ones on, and start riding in like 30 seconds, and it's awesome. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so the way that you swap these frames out without even taking your skates off is obviously by pressing these 2 buttons and then popping things out. You can't have the screws on, there's no way you could get to those without taking your skates off. So I'm going to show you that right now. I've seen videos where people are doing this and they press it down and it just kind of like stays depressed, stays pressed down, and then you can press the other one down and then you can pop it off. I don't know if this is a common thing, but mine don't really do that. Once I press this down, it tends to just like pop back up within like half a second or 2. And so I can't really get both of these pressed down at the same time very well. So what I've been doing is basically I press this one down and then I pull here and pull this slider outward just a few millimeters, just enough so that this plastic is covering this button and it can't pop back up again. And then I do the other one, and basically as soon as I press it down, the whole thing just like pops apart. And I can do that pretty easily with my skate on. So what I do basically, if you have the skate on like this, you got it underfoot, I reach down with my outside hand and just kind of press up, and I'll try to do it right now. And then I pull this back part out, just like that. So it's just out a little tiny bit. And then go to the front, same thing, press that button in, and there you go. And it's as easy as that. And then I just kind of put my, to switch to a different frame, I'll just put this same frame back on, but you could grab your other frame, pull your foot up, there we go. Okay, so that's on, and then you just go, kind of turn your foot to the outside a little bit, put this over, make sure it's all lined up, and press it in nice and snugly, and there you go. And I always smack it in to make sure that it's locked, and then I feel underneath to make sure that button is up and running in the right position, which it is. If you don't have both of those locked in, you're kind of screwed, and that's how you do it. So I guess the big question is, is it safe to ride these skates without using these screws to hold the sole plate to the boot? Is the instant frame change system by itself enough to hold the sole plate and frame onto the boot? In my experience so far, yes. There have been a couple times where I did not have these buttons snapped in all the way and noticed it kind of coming off as I was skating and had to sit down and redo that, so that is kind of scary. But definitely when I switch these, I press the button sometimes and I'm like, wow, that's all that's holding these on? That's kind of scary, but I haven't had any issues yet. I'm not doing huge impact tricks. Maybe the most impact is like jumping down a 5-stair or something and landing on flat concrete, which is pretty big impact. I weigh like 185 pounds. But I think anything bigger than that, well, I'm not planning on doing anything bigger than that, but if you are, that would probably be kind of sketchy without those screws holding it in. People also worry about like the power transfer, like if you have all these moving parts that are just kind of held together by plastic buttons and stuff, how much energy transfer are you really getting when you're pressing down? Are you going to lose a lot of that speed, lose a lot of that like power blading, acceleration and speed if you're using big wheels? And I haven't had an issue with that either. These actually, I don't know why people are so concerned with that, because it actually is a really cool system to kind of deal with the power transfer. So the bottom of the shift has these cutouts. Frame actually sits right against your foot. That is the bottom of the liner. So the only thing between my foot and this is the liner. You know, this hole sits right on top of that in both sections. So there's actually a really good power transfer. You could worry about a little of the like side-to-side motion and losing some energy with that. And that probably does happen compared to some other skates, especially if you're not using the screws. I'd say if you are using the 4 screws, you've got as good a solid connection as any aggressive skate, besides Aeons of course. But I mean, most aggressive skates only have like 4 to 6 little screws holding the sole plates on anyway, so you got the whole IFC system plus 4 screws. You're going to be as solid or more solid than any other aggressive skate. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is how these shifts work with the Wish frame, which is this 4-wheeled high-low frame with a massive H block. It's an amazing frame. I super highly recommend it. It actually makes me like feel like I don't even need the shifts because I just keep coming back to this frame and I could just ride this frame. I ride this frame like 90% of the time. So yeah, it's awesome. It does work with the shift. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Some things you should know though. So first of all, with any aggressive skate, you're going to need to make kind of a divot to fit the 72mm wheel. I would not recommend using a less than 72mm wheel with the Wish frame. Like when I first got these, I was riding like a 68-58 setup or something, and it sucked compared to the 7260. 7260 is just like amazing. So definitely just like, you know, do the modification where you take some of the plastic off so you can fit this 72mm wheel. That's no different from any other aggressive skate. You'd have to do that with anything. I actually had to go all the way through. So you can see on the front here, I went right through and gave the 72mm wheel some room. On the back, I didn't really do that. It's just like super thin, almost see-through, but there's enough space for the wheel to spin freely. So initially I had it like that on the front too, where it was just super thin and the wheel could spin freely. But when I put the actual boot on and actually put weight on my toes there, it rubbed. And I could feel it rubbing and it was not a good feeling. So took this all the way out, definitely spins freely, put the thing back together, and it actually still rubbed a little bit when I put weight on my toes. So I actually took the Dremel and took a little bit of material off the toe of the actual boot itself, which didn't expect to really have to do that, but once I did that, it works great. I have 0 issues now whatsoever, but I did have to make that extra modification to the actual boot itself. The other thing is, the sliders, when I first got them, didn't quite slide out all the way in. They did. They could go in far enough for the buttons to pop up. It'd be solid, but they were like directly pressing on the wish frame right there, where there's this little like kind of part that pops out. So all I did is I took the slider and just like took a millimeter off the end. You can see that right there. It was like a straight line. Now it was a millimeter off the end, millimeter off that end, and now it works perfectly. Alternatively, you could just like Dremel this little plastic part off, and then it would work with any of the sliders. You don't have to keep modifying your slider. So either way, you can definitely make it work, but I would recommend making all those modifications to have the best experience with the wish frame. Okay, so that's my whole review. Like I said, there's other shift skate reviews, so you can watch those too. I love these, highly recommend them, and hope you have fun skating.